Hey everybody, welcome to Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. This is episode number 355 of our YouTube channel and podcast, and I could not be more excited to continue sharing with you guys personal finance topics that I think can be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. Today, we are going to be talking about retirement savings, and specifically the change in retirement savings that has occurred due to COVID. And I don't just want to talk about COVID. I don't want this to be a COVID episode, but I want this to be more about how we react to negative events and how we react to emergencies in our lives, and specifically in our financial lives, and what we should do when emergencies come. But all this is just based on an article that's talking about the retirement savings rate and COVID and how COVID had that type of impact. So stick around for a discussion of all that and more in today's episode. Before we get started, though, if you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan, and that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long-form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions, and you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. Now, if you know me and you know this show, you know that I preach the importance of investing for the future, and I preach the importance of investing in retirement accounts and saving for retirement over a long period of time. And I also make very clear that there is a time and a place for everything that you do financially, right? Just because you are, in a place where you can save for retirement with the money that you have, maybe that's not the most efficient use of your money. Maybe you should take care of other foundational financial things first, right? That's what I teach. It's what I preach. Or maybe you should begin investing based on where you're at, right? This all goes back to the financial action plan and the specific steps I think you should take to get to long-term financial freedom, and steps that they're proven to work. They absolutely work, right? But there are things that occur in our lives all the time that can throw a wrench in things. And COVID threw a wrench in a lot of things. And I did some COVID episodes, and this is not specifically what this is about today, but COVID is just the event that was, causing some impact in, this statistic of retirement savings that we're looking at, right? So there's this article out in CNBC, and it says 1 in 5 Americans are saving less for retirement due to COVID. Okay, so they're putting it on COVID, but let's see if this is what should actually be happening. So this is saying 1 in 5 are saving less. So I'm assuming they're saying if all 5 individuals were already saving, then 1 in 5, decrease the amount that they're saving. But let's see what they say. Okay. It says that the pandemic has taken a hefty toll on retirement security for many in the U.S. About 17% of Americans said that they're saving less for retirement due to COVID's impact on their finances, according to a recent survey by the Penny Hoarder. So 17%, not quite 1 in 5, but pretty close, more like 1 in 6. And yet, nearly as many, roughly 16%, said they're saving more money thanks to the forced decrease in spending. The survey polled more than 1,000 adults in October. Okay, so this was a bit of a clickbait article. Why? Because there may be 17% that are saving less, but there's 16% that are saving more, right? So a little bit of a balance there. But let's continue on. Okay, 1/3 of Americans who plan to retire say that it will now happen later because of COVID, according to the study from AgeWave and Edward Jones. While most savers recognize it is increasingly their responsibility to fund their retirement rather than relying solely on a pension or Social Security, 43% worry about what will happen if Social Security runs dry, which I think is a reasonable worry, even though I don't know if it will completely run dry, but it may change in a very material way. And a separate survey by personal finance site Magnify Money found that that was the case. Now, Already, the government has said that Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money sooner than expected due to the pandemic. An annual government report released in August estimated that this could happen in as little as 12 years. And so that less than rosy outlook threatens to shrink retirement payments and increase healthcare costs for older Americans, which just amplifies the need to save money for retirement and do so in a very aggressive way. Low interest rates, higher inflation, and ongoing market volatility pose additional problems for retirement security. I don't think that's the case. I don't think they pose a problem for retirement security. Yeah, inflation can be a problem, but if we're investing over a long period of time, we are getting the benefits of inflation by owning the stocks of the companies that are producing the inflation. However, there are tricks for gradually increasing the amount you put away and a mix of assets that will offer some protection as well, including equities and then some other types of securities like tips and commodities. But those aren't as big a deal, especially in this world of investing in the way that we choose to, as just investing in equities or stocks is. Most experts recommend meeting with a financial advisor to shore up a long-term financial plan. And that's what I want for each one of you guys, right? So this is a very concise, little article. Doesn't give us a whole lot in the way of empirical evidence, just this survey that was done. But I'm not super worried about the impact that COVID has had on retirement savings. I think that a lot of people who have struggled to save for retirement probably still struggle to save for retirement. Now, the people who would say that they are investing less or saving less for retirement are likely doing so either out of an irrational thought process. Okay, so either they think that there's more risk to it than there actually is. Okay, or they are doing so because they have lost a job or something of the like, right? They've had some type of negative externality occur in their life. But the fact that we're saying here that 1 in 5 are saving less because of COVID, I don't think that's probably the case, right? I think that some may blame the fact that they are saving less on COVID, but I don't think that 20% of retirement savers are saying, hey, COVID is holding me back. It might have held you back temporarily, but I don't think COVID is something that is actively holding anybody back, especially not at this point in the pandemic. Now, again, that's not to say it's not holding anyone back. I'm just saying we talk about large numbers, probably not holding 1 in 5 retirement savers back. Okay. Now, this brings about a pretty serious question, though. How do we deal with emergencies when it comes to our retirement savings? Okay, because COVID, it's been around now for 2 years, but it's crazy to even say that, but it's been around now for 2 years, and it was an emergency. Is an emergency. Is something that is occurring, right? And that is not predictable. Okay, and it has and can have a very big impact on your financial life. So how do we deal with that? And specifically, how do we deal with that when it comes to saving for retirement? So if you guys know what my financial action plan looks like, you know what I may say about this, but if you don't, I'm just going to recap it very shortly for you. That way we can all be on the same page as we move forward in this episode. So the financial action plan, again, is just a set of steps or a set of actions that you need to do to get to long-term financial freedom, based on my opinion, based on fact, based on things that work well and are very efficient in helping you to build wealth and get to long-term financial freedom. So the first thing, and you do all these in order, right? The first thing is create a unique monthly budget, right? Know where your money's going, track your expenses, all those types of things. The second thing that I tell you to do is to have 1 month of household expenses put into a savings account or money market account or something to begin having some money set aside if emergencies were to occur. The third thing is if you have an employer match that's offered to you in a retirement account, take the employer match because that is free money, right? And we want to take advantage of free money and go ahead and start working through that investing process in our life without going overboard with the amount that we actually invest. Okay, so do that. Then I want you to get out of all consumer debt. And the reason that we do that is to free up our cash flow, right? That way we can invest aggressively. We can, buy a home and pay that home off. We can be very generous. All those things get better when we are out of consumer debt. So get out of consumer debt. Then I say build up 4 to 6 months of household expenses in an emergency fund, right? So just buff up what you already have begun in the second part of the plan. In the sixth part, I tell you to invest at least 15% of your household income for your future, right? So this is where retirement savings would really be at the forefront. Yes, you may have started it when you were just getting the match, but now we're saying 15% of your income. This is aggressive investing. Okay, and that's where a lot of what we're going to talk about today is, is housed. But I'm going to go ahead and finish the financial action plan for those of you all who do not know it. So then, while you were doing that, buy a house if you don't already own one, right? And because home ownership is a big part of building wealth in the United States and has historically been so. Okay, so have a house. If you get a mortgage on the home, pay the mortgage off early while you are working on that sixth part where you are investing at least 15% of your income. And then once we do that, right, we pay off the home, we're still investing aggressively, then we can max everything out in the eighth part, right? Max out any type of investing that you have available to you. Just invest absolutely as much as you can. And then in the ninth part, just give extremely generously, okay? Which we should be doing at all times, but we can do very, very much so when it comes to being out of debt, not having a house payment, having a nest egg that we're building up, all those types of things. We have a lot of free cash flow in order to be extremely generous, okay? So what does this have to do with Americans saving less in retirement due to COVID? Well, let's say that, COVID caused you to lose a job, which for some people it absolutely did. And for some people, maybe people who are choosing not to get vaccinated or who can't get vaccinated, and maybe their work is implementing some mandate, or government's implementing some mandate, whatever, right? Then they are maybe losing their jobs now. Okay, and so if you are losing your job or have lost your job or whatever, that can be a big setback for saving for retirement, because if you don't have income, then it's a problem. So what would be my suggestion to somebody who has that type of emergency or has had that type of emergency? First and foremost, right, we need to find new work, and we need to press pause on wherever we're at just to make sure that we can continue to live out our financial lives and our real lives, right, our day-to-day lives in a way that is as comfortable as possible. That's why I tell you guys to have an emergency fund saved up, right? Because if you don't and you lose a job, right, then how are you going to get money other than unemployment, right? I want you to still be able to, cover your bills. I want you to still be able to do things in your financial life that are at least basic to keep up with, the bills that you have and things like that, and not have to fall behind just because you lost a job. But yes, get a new job as quickly as possible. If you don't have an emergency fund, this is going to be very, very difficult. You're going to have to get a job quickly, or have some unemployment for a while you're trying to get a job. But ultimately, the goal is get a new job as quickly as possible and then resume wherever you're at in the financial action plan. And if you are not yet to the point where you're investing aggressively for retirement, investing at least 15% of your income for your future, then this is not a problem. Right? It shouldn't hold you back. It shouldn't make you save less for retirement, right? But maybe you take a job that you make less money. Well, then you may save less for retirement. I understand that, right? That may be just a natural progression that occurs. But I'm just going to guess that 20% of Americans didn't have that situation occur. 20% of retirement savers didn't have that situation occur. All right? And you may also be in a place where you're like, hey, maybe I'm more worried about things because of COVID, so I'm going to save less in retirement so I can have more liquid cash over here in case I do lose my job. Well, look, as long as you have some general idea of whether or not your company or your place of business or whatever is going to do anything that may cause you to lose your job, then there's no reason to worry. Okay, don't have irrational fears about your money because it causes you to do irrational things like saving less for retirement, right? So unless that's the case, just have your emergency fund, maybe have your emergency fund more fully funded than just 4 months of household expenses. Maybe have the full 6 months, right? And then continue to invest aggressively. Continue to, and when I say aggressively, I'm not talking about the type of investments that you are actually buying, which for some people that may be fine to be more aggressive in their investing. But I'm talking about the amount of money that you're putting away. 15% of your income is a fairly aggressive amount to be putting away for anyone, right? And I understand that. But if you're out of debt, you have an emergency fund built up, that should not be a problem, right? It should be something that is very, very doable for you and your family, okay? So what's the underlying theme of what I'm talking about here, right? When it comes to COVID, and there are other situations with COVID. If you get sick and or out of work for some time or whatever, that may set you back in the short term, whatever it may be, right? The underlying tone of what I'm saying and the underlying message of what I'm saying is that any emergency that you have can be well taken care of by an emergency fund. Now, that's not to say that an emergency fund is going to be enough to cover everything every time, right? And it's not to say that an emergency fund is going to keep you from, falling backwards in your financial life at some point, right? But what I'm saying is it can be an extremely useful buffer, right? It can be something that at least allows you to have some leeway between where you are and absolute tragedy, right? Because we don't want to just fall into absolute tragedy every time something negative happens. And I think that's a big problem with us as Americans, right? Is we don't give ourselves any leeway. We don't give ourselves any safety net, right? We're just like, hey, I'm going all in. I'm going to just, spend every dollar that I have. I'm going to try to save for retirement, all these types of things. And then when something negative happens, we look around like, what? That happened to me? That no way that could happen to me, which is just irrational. Doesn't make sense, right? We should have some contingency plan for the future, especially given the fact that there is no contingency plan for us otherwise, right? Yeah, unemployment, whatever, but unemployment eventually runs out, right? And maybe unemployment isn't enough to, and it's not going to be enough to make up for the income that you lost. And, you may have very substantial expenses that you have to cover, right? So all these things just speak to specifically having your financial life set up in a proper way, right? Following something like the financial action plan and having a financial foundation set. Because let's just say, right, let's say you are somebody who is putting money away for retirement. And I'm not saying that you're following my plan. I'm just saying, let's say you're anyone, right? You're putting money away for retirement. And let's say that some emergency hits your family. And let's say you have debt, right? So you have payments that you must make, right? You have some debt and you have very little to none in savings. And you get this costly emergency, right? Well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is your cash flow is going to be extremely strained because you still have to pay those who you owe your debts to, right? You have to make those payments, and you don't have that much money to be able to throw at whatever this is. You're going to have to come up with more money, so it might force you deeper into debt, okay? So the reason that I tell you get out of debt, build up the emergency fund, and then invest aggressively for retirement is because it can create this buffer between you and tragedy, and then you can take care of the tragedies pretty simple, right? Or not even the tragedies, but just the emergencies very simply, and then get back to where you were at in the plan. It's very difficult to get back to where you're at when, one, you don't know where you're at because you're not following any type of specific plan, but it's going to be difficult to get back to saving for retirement in the way that you want to when, you are in debt and you don't have an emergency fund and an emergency occurs. Then that's going to make you stop investing. It's going to make you maybe go deeper into debt. It's definitely going to make you, struggle to pay those who, you owe money to, and it's going to make you, not have any residual savings left over, right? So I could see where you would save less for retirement if an emergency occurred in that way. I can understand why that is the case, but a lot of this is just on us. It's on us to build a financial foundation that is healthy, Okay, without the foundational things, without the being out of debt, without the budgeting properly, without tracking our expenses, without having an emergency fund, then investing for retirement is useless, right? Because eventually what's going to happen? Emergencies are going to happen. Tragedy is going to happen. And we can't guess how much of that type of thing is going to occur. But what we can know is that in some way, shape, or form, it is going to occur. So we need to be prepared. We need to have some preparation for those types of things happening in our lives. And if we can be generally prepared and we can just follow a plan, a conservative financial plan, which is what I lay out for you in the financial action plan, then we can be way better off and just get back to where we were at. And we don't have to be saving less for retirement. We can be saving the exact same amount once we get back to where we're at. Because what I tell you to do in the financial action plan is let's just say if you are saving for retirement and an emergency occurs and you deplete your savings to take care of that emergency, I tell you build back up that emergency savings and then get back to the investing. But pause the investing to build back up the previous steps. Don't try to do them at the same time, because in doing so, everything gets half-baked and you have the situation where, hey, we're saving less for retirement because we don't have the proper savings, and we're trying to do that at the same time as well, right? All I'm suggesting to you is that your financial life would be better off, and you'd be better able to deal with emergencies like COVID, like other big things that can happen in your life, like a family member getting cancer, like you getting cancer, like somebody passing away, like all these tragic things that can occur and nobody wants to talk about, right? But when they happen, everybody looks shocked that they happen. Look, I'm not saying you can't be shocked or surprised that something negative occurs, but I'm saying when it does, you shouldn't look around and go, oh, I'm so surprised that negative things happen. You should know that negative things happen, right? And you should be financially prepared, at least in some way, shape, or form, that negative things can happen, okay? I'm not saying that you can bulletproof your life. Not saying that that's the case at all, right? But what you can do is you can put up some guardrails. You can provide yourself with some safety, with some security in order to make sure that things don't happen in such a negative way. So just think about it this way, right? The president has people around him. He has Secret Service around him. Okay, does that keep somebody from doing something to the president? It doesn't keep that from happening, right? That can happen. But what it does is it decreases the likelihood that, one, that would happen, and then two, if it did happen, that it would be as big a deal as it would have if there was nobody there. And it's the same kind of idea with your money, right? If you have an emergency fund, if you have no debt, if you have money saved up for emergencies, then you're going to be in a place where if something negative does occur, it's not that you don't have to pay for it, because you are going to have to pay for it, but it's just going to lighten the blow. It's going to make the blow a little easier on you and your life, and you'll still be able to do all the things that you were able to do before. Now, something that I do want to speak to here is that, even though it says people are saving less in retirement after COVID or due to COVID, right, which again I think is a stretch to say that that's actually the case. I think that may be people, blaming and not, taking the responsibility for where they should have their financial lives. But I think it's very interesting that, you had 16% say that they were saving more money thanks to the decreased spending. Okay, well, what about the other people, right? What about the people who are saving less? Did they not have decreases in spending, right? Or did they not have the same type of stimulus checks coming in or whatever as these other people? I think what this turns into really is you have people who are doing responsible things with their money and a lot of people who aren't. And again, I'm not saying that everybody within that 1 in 5 or that 17% that are saving less, I'm not saying they're all bad with money, and I'm not saying that they're all doing bad things or have done bad things with their money, because some of them, it can be very legitimate that it is because of COVID that they are worse off or that they are saving less for retirement. But I would also guess that there are quite a few of them, again, that are blaming and that maybe they could have done more and chose not to. Maybe they could have invested and instead they consumed, but you had that roughly 16% that says, no, we're going to actually increase the amount that we invest because of what has happened during COVID. Look, a lot of this goes back to who we are financially, right? And it goes back to who we are psychologically. Because just think about this. If you're somebody who doesn't really plan, right? You're not a big planner, right? Maybe you're not a saver, you're a spender, which there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to balance that with being a good financial manager, right? So you can be naturally slanted toward spending, but still be a good financial manager, okay? Because you know what has to be done, right? But let's say you're a spender. Let's say you're very free-spirited person with your money, and something negative occurs, right? Something that may knock you off your horse, metaphorically, right? It may be more difficult to just jump back on, right? Or let's say somebody's throwing you free money in the way of stimulus checks. It may be a lot easier to choose to just consume that money than it would be to pay off debt with it, or than it would be to invest that money or do something that may be a bit more prudent, right? I think a lot of this can be touted as investor psychology and the psychology of individuals with their money, because people are going to choose to do different things. Because the forced decrease in spending happened for most people last year and into this year. And the fact that that's the case means that some people took advantage of it and invested more because of that. And then some people just said, okay, that's more money that I can consume, but I'm still going to invest less because, oh yeah, COVID is what's got in the way. Look, I just don't think, especially at this point, that COVID can be that big of an excuse as to why you are not investing the way you should for the future. I don't think any emergency can be a huge excuse unless you have something that's just absolutely debilitating and recurring, or something that's going to be with you forever that's super costly, right? I think those things can be reasons, but ultimately, if anything is temporary, right, then we can get over it. Okay, and it may take time to get over it if the emergency is particularly bad, but if we're talking about COVID here, I think we can get to the other side, at least most of us. I think we can get to the other side when it comes to retirement savings and get back to where we were. Again, I believe that we all should be saving for our retirements. I believe that we all should be systematically putting money away, and I think that some people are more serious about that than others, right? And I think that some people are looking for any reason to say that, we're saving less because of this thing that we can't control. Control what you can control. And what can you control? You can control whether or not you're in debt. You can control that by and large, okay? You can control the amount of money you set aside in an emergency fund. You can control that by and large, right? You can control your spending. You can control that by and large, right? You can control whether or not you actually put money into your retirement account, or whether you consume that money. You can control those things. So control what you can control. And then if there are things outside of your control, which is what the emergency fund is for, right? You can throw the emergency fund at it, and you can do your best to take care of the things that need to be taken care of in the short term in order to get you back on your financial horse and moving in the right direction. Again, I don't want any of this to sound insensitive, and I don't want any of this to sound like I'm just, pull you up by your bootstraps type person, right? But I understand that there is far less in the way of true victims financially to COVID, right? Especially when it comes to retirement savings. People who are already saving for retirement, you're saying that you're in such a bad place financially that you're still a victim and you're saving less because you're a victim to COVID. I'm just not buying it, especially not 20% of Americans, especially when there was another 16% that are doing more, right? They're doing better. I'm not buying it, right? And so I don't want this to sound insensitive to those of you who have really had to deal with some financial hardship, because I know that that is real, right? I just also know that, I know that people take surveys in a funny way, right? And they may answer questions in a way that allow these types of headlines to occur. But I also know that underlying this headline is a lot of people, in that 4 in 5 Americans that are either saving the same or saving more, that they had financial hardship too, and yet they got to the other side of it, did the right things, had emergency funds set up, weren't in debt, all those types of things. All I have to say to you is build your financial foundation, do the right things at the beginning, and then when something negative is to occur, you will not be so just knocked off your horse about it that you won't be able to get back on in the exact same way later on once you've actually cleaned up the mess and done the things that you needed to do. You can control a lot more than you think you can, but the things that you can't, take them, let them happen, right? Control what you can control, right? And really attack things financially on the other side. And if you need somebody to help walk you through that, then I can help you do that. I am no therapist, right? But I can help you with the financial parts and getting your money allocated in the right places in times of emergency. So hopefully this helps you to make decisions in the face of adversity. And hopefully this helps you to know that, there are people out there who are actually doing better post-COVID when it comes to their retirement savings, and you can be one of those people if you build a strong financial foundation and move in the right direction in the financial action plan. So thanks for watching this video. If you could go down below, hit the big red subscribe button, like this video, leave me any feedback in the comments down below, and I'll be sure to respond to anything you leave down there. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify podcasts, be sure to subscribe and leave me a review on either one of those platforms. Follow me on social media at MNO with Dylan. And that's really good supplemental materials to all the things I'm putting out in these long form episodes on YouTube and the podcast every single day. And then if you need somebody to help you to build a financial plan and keep you accountable to that plan over the long term, then I can do that. Just DM me on any of the major social media sites and tell me that you are interested in financial coaching sessions. And you and I can begin working together, pushing towards your long-term financial goals and ultimately pushing you on towards long-term financial freedom, which is what I hope for every single individual who's watching or listening to this show on a day-to-day basis. So tune in Monday as I continue talking about personal finance topics that I think could be useful for you in your long-term financial journey. So thanks for tuning into this episode of Money's No Object. I'm your host, Dylan Howell. God bless.